engage and execute our work. Welcome, everyone, to this session that is around learning without barriers and with a focus on inclusion and accessibility for all persons. I'm really, really glad to be here. So, my name is Dolapo Agbede. I've been in the industry for about almost 20 years now. Started out as an engineer, schools, engineering, power systems, spent all my internships in high tension power substations, entered the labor force on the cusp of telecom infrastructure in Nigeria, building telecom infrastructure. And that's why some of the things we do today and take for granted, building it from greenfield was what I was doing in the early 2000s into late 2018. Um, done work with a whole plethora of organizations across CSOs, development, private sector, public sector. And it's been quite interesting that there's a new focus to make sure no one is left behind. You'd probably find that a lot of your good work will not just be done in one location. Before, or like before, when we were all just locked to your location. But now with the internet, you can serve everywhere. But I am interested in keeping our attention within serving Africa. And that's where the use cases for this conversation will come from. So, yes, the fact that we now do quite a lot in hybrid mode has also exposed the fact that we have a lot of opportunities and there are gaps also. Inclusion is not a value add anymore. It is um, something that is absolutely a must do. It's not a nice to do anymore. And what is our opportunity as learning and development professionals? We can do equitable, impactful learning programs for our clients across the continent. What does learning without barriers look like? Inclusive learning, I mean, in the first place, for you to be thinking about inclusion, it means there must have been some sort of sense of exclusion in the first place, whether it's excluding underserved populations, excluding women, excluding younger people, excluding more um, mature people. For whatever it is, there must have been some sort of maybe unintentional exclusion for inclusion to become something to be intentional about. So, the opportunity to make sure we cater for all persons, um, it doesn't matter what their background is like, what their circumstance is like. It doesn't matter whether they have access to technology or not. It means that we can make sure we train everyone and we do not, we're still as excellent as possible. In everything, I think for me, the most important thing is that all our learners need to reach their full potential. And then we must make sure we take into account visible and invisible constraints that should be there. As professionals ourselves, I'm sure we already know what we do. We're already thematic, um, we're probably thematic subject matter experts already. So now what we're really going to be looking at in this session will be what are those extra things we need to look at that helps us to focus on really serving our audience. And why is this even important? Our audience too is evolving. I remember all the words that you dropped in the chat earlier: dynamic, inclusive, evolving. That is true. So now you're already a subject matter expert. Yes, you have your tools, you have your content, you have everything. Can we now really have a closer look at serving, at acknowledging, yes, first acknowledging that you have this whole diversity now in front of you, and then now to be intentional to deliver the best experience possible. Now let's look at what does inclusive program design, what do we need to take into account? And that's moving on to the next slide. The first thing we need to take into account definitely is representation. Again, as experts ourselves, you've already done your needs assessment. You know the reason why you are delivering the training. You know the reason why you are developing this program. for this client or this organization. So all that is already done. But now you're looking at the representation. Who's in the room? What have they chosen to disclose? Just in case they've not disclosed anything. But we need to make sure that, of course, the content that we have is reflective to make sure that our audience is comfortable and they see themselves in what we are saying. That is so important. And that definitely would be felt by our pictures, the kind of pictures we use, that they're inclusive intentionally, and they're speaking to our audience. And then, of course, the case studies we also speak to. Okay, we have to make sure that the learning, because again, we have many options. There are different ways we deliver our expertise these days. It's either you're doing it virtually or you're doing it physically. Make sure that is accessible for your audience per time. And now that we have highlighted the fact that we do have a diversity in our audience, we have a diversity in our audience, then we need to just make sure that everyone can participate fully. Flexibility, we need to adapt to whatever pace would make sure our audience is fully carried along. And then we also need to measure that what we're setting out to achieve is what we truly achieve. We need to explore different ways to get that feedback. I'd like to pause here a bit, and I'd like to ask, across numbers 1 to the last option we have here, which one is a new context that we have not considered before? So, yes, representation, accessibility, flexibility, measurement are very important to make sure that you are having the right context for everybody. Okay, let's moving on. How do we make sure we're designing for everyone that needs to be in our session? You would find out that sometimes you might have technology access gaps. So especially this would impact your virtual sessions, or if you want to do interesting things like you want people to scan QR codes, or you want to do, as we're infusing a lot of gamification in the way we deliver our trainings or deliver our programs. We need to just be sure that the technology that we want to deploy is really going to be appropriate for the audience we have per time. We need to be intentional about that. We need to be aware that more and more we're in a workplace where, or rather, workplaces across Africa are becoming more and more inclusive, especially around neurodiversity and disability. So if we now have colleagues at work in organizations that we serve who are now disclosing to HR, disclosing to the organization the needs they might have based on impairments or conditions they are managing, then as a learning and development expert, when you get your brief, it's okay to ask if you have a diverse nature of persons in your audience so that you can prepare appropriately for them, you know. Another thing, whether we like it or not, the topics we deliver, the information we have, the knowledge we have, the insights we need to share, we'll find out that more and more the lines are blurring across who our clients are, especially if what we our areas of expertise, our areas of expertise are cross-cutting. So we could be applying for, it could apply for the corporates, it could apply for the private sector, and it could also apply for the development space, you know. So we need to be very mindful of that. You need to define, or rather design options into your contents. You know, how do you want to deliver this? Are there options for your audience? based on their diversity. It might look like it's a lot, but honestly, by the time you prepare properly once and you are even expanding the different ways that your delivery happens, your toolkit is expanding. That's what you're doing. So you have different varied ways to pass more or less exactly the same message across the different diversity of styles that your audience might prefer. And you'd find out that this makes you this you would stand out as an expert in your space. Whether we like it or not, mobile phones seem to be the first level learning, is the easiest device to grab and learn from. So make sure everything you are building, making is model by mobile is mobile ready. Then of course, like we said, you need to have the right context and content to make sure that you're engaging with your audience so that they can relate with what you are saying. Okay. What does inclusive trainings look like in practice? And why does it even matter anyway? Okay, thank
Please,
you
yeah.
so much. Yes. And why is this important? I'm going to pause here a bit and just ask us, why do we think this is important? Why do we need to plan for learning without barriers? Why is inclusion and accessibility very, very important in the world we have today? And there's a context I'd like to bring to all of us attention as learning and development experts. And if we go to the next slide, um, we would see that I have the privilege to share this with us. Um, Welcome to my world. And I say this because this is a medical report that I got in 2008. So I've learned to share this. So the date on this, it might be too small, but it shows that it's February 2008. But I was diagnosed with really advanced glaucoma in August 10, 2007. It was totally shocking for me. I'd never heard what glaucoma, I'd never heard what that was until they told me that's what I had. And nobody had ever discussed that in my family. Um, and it was so far gone that at the point of diagnosis, they could not offer me 2 more weeks of sight. And I'll pause here. I do this glaucoma awareness everywhere I go because I kind of like wish I had heard somebody else talking about it as much as I do now. And essentially, what does glaucoma do? It destroys the optic nerve. So I've been a person wearing glasses since I was a 10-year-old. So I've been around opticians, ophthalmologists, and optometrists practically from age 10 to now be this person that nobody checked my eye pressures. I didn't even know that there was something called pressure of the eye. I mean, that was not part of what they taught me in biology when I was in high school, right? So it's either long-sightedness, short-sightedness, or astigmatism or something in those days. But now, okay, apparently there's so many other things that can happen to the eye. So please, 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 I always take every opportunity to tell everyone, kindly make sure that when you do your health reviews, your health checks, make sure you check your eye pressures. Um, it's typically supposed to be between 18 and 20. But the point is, you can imagine at the point of diagnosis, my right eye, which you can see the situation it was in, so everything that is red is damaged. So images are forming through the lens, through my glasses, through my lens, through my eyeballs, and on my retina. But between and hopefully my brain was working and is still working. But the image moving from behind my retina to my brain, that was where the problem was. So these are cross sections, left and right eye, of my optic nerve. And what is red is totally damaged. No image is passing through. What is yellow, what is passing through is so compromised that it cannot be properly assimilated for information. And what is green was only what was working. So, like I said, the normal pressures are supposed to be between 18 and 20. My right eye at the point of diagnosis was 198. My left eye was 122. Those things don't happen overnight. So it just meant that as people gave me thicker and thicker glasses from age 10, nobody checked my eye pressures. So please, you should check your eye pressures, and you should tell all your loved ones to check their eye pressures, because blindness due to glaucoma is preventable, and early detection is the way to make sure um, no one ends up with a medical report like this. But barring that, it was just to bring our attention back to the fact that, we think that we externalize the people we need to include. And maybe some of us are truly going through some sort of um, transition journeys, what I prefer to call it, not tragedies, that makes us require some sort of extra consideration or inclusion, or people need to support to remove the barriers that we might face, just so that we might fully participate. So my point is just to say that whatever inclusion we're doing is not just for people who are external to us, but many people around us might really even need this inclusion that we're talking about. And it's only that maybe for whatever reason they've not disclosed, they don't feel safe, the environment does not provide the the opportunity that even if you disclose, it does not mean there are unwanted consequences like job losses or things like that. Um, and I'm glad to say that at the point of diagnosis, I'd just been 2 years into my telecom infrastructure building career, and I did 11 more years with that organization. They kept it simple. It was a performance rewarding space. Dolapo, are you interested in working? And what do we need to do to adapt? Because we like the way you work. So that was fine. And because it was performance rewarding, whatever growth I had in my career was not about let's help the blind lady. No, it was about who was the best person to do the job. And if I turned out to be the best person to do the job, then I did. And it led to me even having expatriate postings across West Africa, leading teams, building teams to build telecom infrastructures for clients across West Africa. I returned to Nigeria in 2012 in a role for 6 years that gave me oversight for 15 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, leading field engineers, because that was what I knew best to do. That was my work experience, and making sure that we gave excellent service for continued business. So again, impairments can happen, but people will still have their competencies. We will still have the opportunity to build capacity, even if we acquire impairments along the way. Like I identify as a blind woman since 2008 and moving forward. Okay. So while I let us breathe on that a bit, let's maybe we should look at some practical strategies on inclusive delivery. So, but I hope we take the learning that life can happen to people or to any of us, but there's always life after life happens, a professional life, a corporate life, whatever life you want, as long as spaces, opportunities, and everything else is as inclusive of us and our aspirations. All right. So if we would come back to this slide so that we do this together, and we see that we're offering two components for strategies for inclusive delivery, both virtual and physical. So, all right, so please go ahead, if you do not mind, to read through, support your blind facilitator to read through the virtual options. I was like doing audition, I'll do this by myself, but now that I've disclosed, I should feel safe to ask for support, right? So thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so you want me to read through the virtual training?
Yes, you read through the virtual bullet points first. Then we get to discuss it together. Then we would read through the physical. We discuss it together because you you put up your hand to be my co-facilitator, then we'll move on to the next slide. Yes,
All right.
that's what we're going to do. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So under the bit for virtual training, we have
Mm-hmm.
one of the bullet points as screen reader compatibility,
Yep.
clear structure slash navigation,
Mm-hmm.
captioned and downloadable content, as
Mm-hmm.
well as breakout sessions with flexible participation style.
Yes, because more and more as we deliver our amazing content across different spaces, of which the virtual world is now somewhere where it seems like we're more in the virtual than in the physical, right? In terms of delivering our trainings. What has been
Yes.
your experience?
Okay, so the thing is, there's been need to serve a larger number of people,
Mm-hmm.
that are
Yes.
in different parts of the world. So
Mm-hmm.
the virtual space has come to stay, especially with
Yes.
the new work of now, knowing fully well that remote and hybrid structure is
Mm,
now something that we're taking very
mm,
seriously. So training and learning
mm-hmm.
virtually more than ever before has been
Yes.
something that we are inculcating into our culture, both as
Mm-hmm.
individuals, as employees in an organization, and
Mm-hmm.
as generally,
Mm-hmm.
that way people who we interact with on a daily basis, we tend to find ways for us to relate with them both ways. So
Yes.
you're not just tuned into one way street. You're just
Mm,
thinking straight off one way and one learning approach. That's why I think I was trying to also mention that before the network glitch, the fact that
mm.
micro learning is something we are taking more seriously now, as
Seriously,
well as
yes.
knowledge sharing sessions. So, all those, just like the last point says, breakout session with flexible participation style. You make it
Yes.
inclusive for every level of
Everyone.
participants.
Great,
Yeah,
great. So I
yeah.
want to call your attention to the captioning. And I have a fun fact about why this is important, but I'd like to hear what you think about it. Who's the captioning for?
Practical strategies for inclusive delivery.
No, the
Um,
captioning, the captioning, yes.
for
To
you
make
mean
sure,
the third bullet point or the
yes,
topic
please.
itself?
No, 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 the third bullet point.
Okay, the captioned and downloadable content.
Yes.
Um, hmm. I mean, there will be people who, even when they are doing virtual training, will want to go back and
Mm-hmm.
look through whatever content they would have seen while they
Mm-hmm.
are online. So people
Okay.
always want to go offline to refer back to the content they have
Mm-hmm.
viewed while
Okay.
the training would have happened online.
Okay. So, for this particular bullet point, the captioning and downloadable training content. So, for example, if I was in your session, I would have disclosed to the organizers that, because I'm a blind participant, if it's possible to have the soft copies, because I cannot, technology today does not allow me to follow with my screen reader what is currently displayed. I have a different tool that I use for that to follow.
All
But the
right.
captioning is also for, so a blind participant or someone with low vision or someone who cannot easily read what is there. So people should not be afraid that everything is going to blindness. Some people do prefer to have the documents so that as you are speaking, they are running through, they can enlarge it. They can, they can make it at the right size for their own comfort to follow, and for the captioning bit, I mean, we could even experiment now. All of us, if we go to captions on our Zoom, you can turn it on. And if you do, so I encourage all of us to do that, just in case we've never done it before. And Olawale, I'll expect you to please do that too. So that as the moderator, it also shows on your own side. What this does is that for a person who is deaf or hard of hearing, just in case there is no interpreter to sign. And again, you can see technology can mess us up, right? So, what this just does is to make sure that a hearing impaired person can follow because they will be reading the captions while everybody else listens. I always encourage all facilitators to turn captions on, especially when they are aware that they might have deaf participants for one reason. One reason. Our tone, the way we enunciate, might not translate accurately to what is being typed out. So sometimes it's hilarious what you say versus what the application types out. And that is what your audience on the other side is seeing. That's what they are relying on. So if you, as a facilitator, you have your captions on, it helps you to also see what others are reading that you are saying through this digital channel you are using. I'm hoping that is at least a fun fact that would support us to um, just even see what these devices are doing for us and the technology is doing for us. I hope that was interesting before we move to the physical. So I yield the mic to you.
All right. So
Ah,
in-person
oh, sorry,
delivery.
just to pause. So a question just came in around, is it cost effective or practical to have interpreters in every training? And that's why you see, I mentioned that leveraging technology is your most cost effective. But I'm calling attention to make sure that the message you want to pass is really what is going through. And then again, another fun fact, not every interpreter is understood by the deaf. And number one, is not every deaf person that also understands sign language. That is also there. The same way, not every blind person uses Braille. I don't. You give me Braille, you spend money to make the documents into Braille, and you give it to Dolapo. She can't use it. So, but we'll come back to the best tip of how to prepare for your audience. But I hope at least I've given some insight. What I'm just pointing out is the captions are there to support your hard of hearing or deaf participants. Turn it on as a facilitator so that you see what it is typing out that it said you said. So that in case you are seeing that, no, this is not what I said, you re enunciate to make sure you're passing the message properly. That's it. And then, of course, we said that we wanted to carry everybody along, right? And if the appropriate interpreter, even if it's a human one, is what is required, I think that cost should be considered. But let's leave that. That's a conversation for a different time. So, yes, Michael, facilitator, physical.
All right. So in-person delivery, accessible
Yes.
venues and materials,
Mm-hmm.
um, inter interpreters and multilingual facilitation, as well as structured
Mm-hmm.
engagement for varied learning speeds. Interesting.
Mm. Yep. Because again, we do have a diverse audience. People just think that it's only to onboard or carry along the persons with one sort of impairment or not. What if the topic you're training in is interesting to, I mean, across Africa, we're largely Anglophone or Francophone. And with the Zoom feature, with the right profile, you can actually have English to French, French to English translations enabled, right? So you could, just because you have disclosed to everyone that you have the capacity to deliver that level of inclusion, you'll be surprised that you might have more people interested in what you have to offer, especially if it's an open session or things like that. So that is language to language. Then there's crossing the barriers of impairments, like for the deaf, like we've kind of like touched on. And you remember I also mentioned that one of the reasons why downloadable materials are important is a person who has a preference to have larger font to read themselves versus what they're seeing on the screen. You've presented them with options. It's the same. Your physical documents that you're sharing out, do people want larger print or do they want the regular size? Or do people learn better? Are people in your audience, are they the ones that will prefer it in the more illustrative mode? Do you have the capacity when you say that you're an L&D expert, that you're delivering fully inclusive sessions? Would you be open to offering this range of options so that everyone takes what fits them best, and in the end, everybody's carried along? So yes, again, like I said much earlier, it might look like a lot of work, but in the end, we just have to build the muscle, especially if we want to differentiate as not only knowledge experts, but also engagement experts.
Yeah, I quite agree with that.
Mm, mm,
Engagement experts. I like that
yeah,
last
yes. And then
caption.
we have someone with a question, and if that question is about in person, what do I, as Dolapo, prefer? I would ask for soft copies. Then I would also please ask that could the facilitators be informed that there will be a blind participant physically in the class? For those who have met me or who have seen me anywhere, or if you see my pictures anywhere, I really do not look like my impairment, as people say. I still wear the glasses that I had from the day that my sight was gone. So they don't work for me, but they're interesting for conversation. They're interesting for conversation starters. They're also, again, keep in mind, I've been wearing glasses since I was 10. If it's not on my nose, I really feel weird. And instead of doing Stevie Wonder-esque, I just let's just keep what I have, and maybe I can speak to negligence in the medical space, and we keep it interesting, and it's part of storytelling, lived experiences, and moving on. But I would ask for soft copies, and the reason why I'm emphatic about disclosures, so that facilitators know, I was invited to participate in a session somewhere. My day was actually, it was a 2 day program, but I chose to come in the first day just to even immerse in what was happening the first day so I could build on for my next day. That's the kind of person I am. So I sat in the first day as a participant, and we had a virtual facilitator. So he could see the room, and everybody in the room who could see him could see him. So he asked for everyone to do some sort of group work to read a document that was provided. I had accepted a hard copy and I put it in front of myself. But the organizers knew because I had disclosed and they had given me a soft copy. So I had picked up my phone, I had my earpiece in my ear, and I was reading through the document with my screen reader, so listening to it with my phone, and I was sitting in front. And the next thing, the virtual facilitator started with, you see, Nigerians can be so badly behaved. I've asked everybody to do this group work and they're supposed to be reading and everything. And that's why some people are choosing to pick up the phone. And you know, it's unfortunate. They will now sit in front and he's so disrespectful to the facility. He was very upset. My goodness. He was so, I just, I put down my phone. And I was just staring. I didn't pick up the hard copies that were in front of me, but I could feel the energy of my host, who was frenziedly. And he came back and, well, different, all of us, we have different ways of reading. And if we need to use our phone, it's okay to use it. He sounded very apologetic. But that was an incident that did not even need to happen. If we're a bit more intentional at making sure all stakeholders that need to be aware are aware. So, like for example, if you had an in-person event and you have people who have disclosed that they have one kind of impairment or not, so maybe there could be someone in the team who's designated and who is identified to them that if they need anything, this your designated person to support you. Because not everybody. I mean, if I walk up to you and I say, "Oh, please, I need some support to move from this point to this point," you look at me again like, am I trying to be funny? And then, but I don't also understand why in Africa people are supposed to look like the challenges they go through. Why? But that is on the lighter note. So again, I hope we've understood why it's important that for those who feel safe to disclose, disclosures also mean preparation. Preparation so that we deliver a good experience for them, both with the content and with the interaction also. And another reason why I'm always very quick to disclose is if like Olawale tells me that you guys call out people to you, answer you, just so that there are some things that I really cannot engage with so that the facilitator will not call Dolapo and then will decide why is she stubborn. Like they like to call you out And then, of course, I can't move out independently. And it will just look like, it will now look like I'm not willing to participate. And thank you, Olawale, I got that. Okay, but I hope this has been interesting, insightful. Again, oh, you cannot learn everything today. But I'm just wanting to open your minds to the fact that, oh, there are quite a number of interesting things you need to consider doing if you want to be inclusive in your training deliveries, in your training preparations, and even in your engagement of persons. So I need to run. I'm so sorry. And thank you so much for facilitating with me.
You're welcome.
Oh, fantastic. So if we move on to the next slide, while you read that, I'm refreshing my own mind with what's on there.
Yeah, evaluating and evolving training programs.
Yes. What's the point of training people? And in the end, we do not check that it's what we wanted to pass is gotten. So again, the same way, you make sure that you're even getting your evaluation back in a way that everyone who's there is able to fully participate to give the feedback.
All right.
Right?
Can I
So
go
I
ahead?
think, yes, we can.
Okay. To build sustainable inclusion, the first bullet point is to use pre and post assessments inclusive of accessibility needs.
Okay.
Gather feedback from underrepresented learner groups, audio platforms, tools, and content regularly.
Yep.
And finally, treat accessibility as part of quality assurance, not as an afterthought. Wow, this is profound.
And honestly, that's what's going to differentiate you for the expert you are vis-a-vis the multitude of others. Okay. This is your biggest takeaway. So next slide. Final thoughts. Please go ahead to read.
All right. So inclusive learning isn't just about compliance, it's about designing for real impact across every learner's profile. Let's build learning ecosystems that skills include and transform across all of Africa. Together, we can bridge excellence and equity in learning across Africa.
I think this is really straightforward. And I'll go to the next slide, which is the one I like the most. Please, you can read this out too. What will be our commitment, all of us? What will be our commitment? And you don't have to say anything. Maybe just note it to yourself. And maybe the real evidence that you are making a commitment is we will all see you doing some things differently. It will not be about cheap talk. It will be about actions. And if we go to the next slide, any questions for me? And I hope this has been interesting and useful.